Hello everyone and welcome back to Nate the Hoof Guy. Today's video is an interesting one, something that you don't see every day. And that is we have got a cow that's got ulcerations in two different spots on the same claw. One down low and one up high. So when it comes to problems with cows' feet, it's easy to think that there's outside forces maybe that are causing problems internally to these feet. But notice as I trim away these layers, right now you don't see a lot of hemorrhaging or anything at all. But the more I go down, the further I get into this foot, closer to real time, you start to see that hemorrhaging appearing. And that's trauma that's being caused from the pedal bone pinching that corium on the inside of the foot. And that's why as that horn is produced, there's trauma to that new corium. You get that bleeding into that new horn, and that's what we see as we take these layers off. So as I'm working down here, you can see I hit that layer where there was a point in this cow's life where she had some hemorrhaging, and it happened throughout that foot. You can see this lower spot here is actually got some infection in it. And then up here, this is the typical sole ulcer site, and this is where a lot of pedal bone trauma happens up above. Now, this is a good time to talk about, I got a question just the other day about seeing some hemorrhaging up in the sole and why I didn't clean all that out and take that away. And that's what I was talking about just now with that hemorrhaging in that layer of hoof. It's nothing that I can take away. It was deposited when that hoof was forming. So that's just going to be some poorer quality horn in those locations, but it's nothing that I can take away or I'm going to affect the angle of the foot and compromise that sole by making it thin. This particular spot here is something I'm going to investigate because something like this could get infected and lead to the problem that we're dealing with today. So what I need to do now for this girl to get her to heal is I need to remove any of the loose horn that's around these particular lesions. And I had another comment the other day too talking about it seems odd that you have to remove a lot of hoof to get new hoof to form. And it does seem counterintuitive. However, the reason we need to do that is, number one, we need to be able to get oxygen in there to help clear up these infections and to help dry this foot out and get new horn to start to grow. But the other thing is these outer layers of hoof are no longer alive. They're no longer of use. In normal situations, they would shed off. But because we're in a freestyle situation, this hoof is not shedding off, so it's remained intact on this foot. But when we have separation due to a problem like this, that separation will allow, or that layer that's separated, because it's not attached tight, it can move when she walks. And when that happens, that loose hoof layer can abrade these lesions underneath and prevent any of that new horn from forming over these spots. So we need to get these layers taken away so that the area can breathe. We'll put a block on that other claw to elevate it, to get it off the ground and keep that sole from touching, the new sole from touching the floor, in order for it to cover up these imperfections that we found and to start producing new horn in those locations. Some of these innermost layers of new horn are almost like skin. They're very soft, very pliable. They don't cut as well with a hoof knife. That's why I switch and use a scalpel in these situations. It allows me to make better cuts when I'm getting real close to corium like this. I don't want to nick that and do any damage to that corium. So that's where I switch it up there. When I get down to some areas where I'm not as worried about that, then I go back to the knife, as I'm going to do here, to remove some of that, that harder horn. I got another question recently asking, how close am I to the corium when I'm working on lesions like this? And the answer is within fractions of a millimeter. The lesions themselves are actually corium that has been inflamed or has some issue to it. So that's literally the corium layer when you see those lesions. And that hoof, the new horn that's growing around those lesions, is super soft. It's if I had to come up with a consistency, it would be very similar to touching a very soft marshmallow. If you were to push on that, that's kind of what corium feels like. That new hoof layer is super, super soft. So here you can get a good look at what those lesions look like now that we've got that horn removed. This one up above, that is then the typical sole ulcer site. That's where we see most ulcerations. This one down here is in the toe triangle. This would probably be another region where we see ulcerations on occasion, not very often, but occasionally. Now what we have to do is we're gonna have to prep this other claw. We're gonna put a block on that. Like I said earlier, what that's gonna do is elevate that injured claw off the ground, keep it from bearing any weight whatsoever, and that will allow these lesions time to heal and time to start producing new corium. In order to produce new corium, we need that lesion itself to heal first, because like I said before, that's the corium. The corium itself is what produces that horn. So when it's damaged, when it's injured, it's not going to produce healthy horn. So we got to get that taken care of first, then it'll begin to produce new horn, and this entire sole will fill right back in. So if you're looking at that block and wondering about its positioning, why it's not centered in the middle of the claw, and the reason is because whenever I put a block on, I line it up with that axial wall. If there's any extra hoof, I'd like it to hang out over the outside wall rather than that inside wall. So now what we're going to do is wrap this with salicylic acid just in case there's any dermatitis present. We've talked about that in other videos. I want to make sure that that corium is free of any bacteria, and so we can get good horn formation right away from that. So I'm going to wrap it with salicylic acid, and we're going to get this girl back to her pen. All right, that's going to do it, guys. As always, thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one.